The morning Karen Harper walked into the county feed store, the old ranchers fell silent. George Harwood lowered his coffee cup.
I give her one winter. City girls don't know dirt. $500 says she's gone by March.
Karen heard every word. 3 weeks later, she used her grandfather's inheritance to buy 200 acres nobody wanted.
This is all of it. Every dollar he left. Don't waste it.
The land was a wreck. Overgrazed pasture, a creek that barely trickled through cracked mud, and not a single tree left standing.
4 years. That's what it will take to bring this water back.
She's actually planting willows, like that's gonna hold back a drought.
Won't matter. This valley will dry up no matter what she does. She'll be gone before the trout ever take.
Let them laugh. Every day I am still here. I am already winning.
But on the fence line, the 3 men kept watching. They didn't know it yet, but the bet they'd made was going to cost them everything. 3 days later, Karen's old pickup rolled through the ranch gate, loaded with fencing wire and a sledgehammer that had belonged to her father.
That creek bed is dead, but I've seen dead things wake up.
She walked the length of the dry stream, marking boundaries with orange flagging tape, then unrolled the first roll of barbed wire.
That fence won't bring the water back.
Karen didn't look up. She pulled the wire taut, stapled it to a cottonwood post, and kept working.
He wants me to answer. That's all this is. I won't give him the satisfaction.
The first rain came that afternoon, a cold September drizzle that turned the dust to mud and made the fence posts heavy. She drove the first wooden stake into the creek bed, building what the Forest Service called a beaver dam analog.
Water slows, drops sediment, sinks in. Grandpa's notes said 40 feet was the minimum. I'll go wider.
By sunset, 3 dams were in place. The creek was still dry, but the strategy was set. And George Harwood's bet was looking cheaper by the hour. By June, the valley was baked dry. Karen's 3 small dams held a ribbon of water no wider than a boot, but beyond her fence the land cracked open like old leather.
Every inch of water is a one argument. The fry come next week.
When the fish truck arrived, Karen carried the bucket herself. She knelt, tipped it, and watched the cutthroats scatter into the thin current. George noticed the mud first. He pulled his ATV onto the road shoulder and stared at the damp ground inside her fence.
Dumb luck. This whole valley'll dry up if the rain don't come.
2 inches. Water table is up. Write it down.
In her journal, she recorded the measurement and underlined it. Her neighbors were selling cattle at a loss on land, turning to powder. Only her creek was beginning to green, a thin line of willows pushing through the mud, while the rest of the valley baked. Bill Taggart stood at his own dry creek bed and looked toward Karen's fence in silence. The bet was still open, but Karen had started a clock that wasn't running on their time. The second summer was worse. Karen stretched another half-mile of fence and planted willows where the creek had started to pool.
If I can get the easement, the tax credits will carry me until the fish come.
The application was 90 pages of soil surveys, water rights documentation, and stream assessments, reviewed by 3 federal agencies.
You are just costing the government money. That creek won't pay you back.
He can't see past his own dust. The water knows more than he does. Keep working.
By August, Bill Taggart sold his spring calves at half price. Jed Paris followed a week later. From the ridge, Karen's ribbon of green was the only living thing for miles in a valley of dead brown. George's herd shrank by a third. He told anyone who'd listen that the girl was a fool.
3 more dams this fall. Then the aquaculture permit. Just stay afloat until the fry take.
The bet was still open, but the bettors were the ones losing ground now. The federal aquaculture permit arrived in early spring. Karen shook the biologist's hand and carried the document to her truck like a deed of ownership.
Now the real work starts. Raceways, pumps, and a lodge that'll make Orvis pay attention.
She announced the plan at the diner, spreading a brochure with the Orvis logo. The ranchers in the back booth sat stiff as fence posts.
Fish in tanks. That'll never work here. This ain't no trout park.
But the Orvis representative, a quiet man in canvas pants, told the room that Karen's stretch of water was the best he'd seen in a decade. He'd endorsed the lodge.
Endorsement. That'll bring the clients. The bet is about to flip.
The tax credit check arrived the following week, $112,000. She used it to order the first 6 concrete raceways. When the bank posted the deposit, word spread through the valley like a grass fire.
$100 grand for a creek. What's the world coming to?
But the bet was no longer about whether she'd stay. It was about whether they could. 6 raceways now lined the creek, each filled with cold water that had been dead ground 2 years ago. Karen stocked 10,000 rainbow fry.
Next, the lodge. If the clients come, this valley will become something no one expected.
A local news crew arrived. The reporter panned across the raceways and called it a project that could change Montana agriculture. From the diner television, the ranchers watched Karen release a trout back into the stream, the camera catching every deliberate motion.
Maybe there's something to it after all.
It's a stunt. She's good at stunts, but stunts don't last.
By October, the lodge frame rose against the cottonwoods, its roofline promising dinner service overlooking restored water. In the raceways, the first trout jumped, silver arcs cutting the surface, drawing a cheer from the construction crew.
Every jump is $1. Every green bank is a roof over this whole idea.
The bet had changed. Now the question wasn't who would leave, but who would last through the drought that still had years to run. By the 4th summer, the drought was no longer a cycle. It was a catastrophe. The state declared agricultural disaster. Emergency feed loans went out to every ranch in the district. Karen declined. Her stream already sustained the only green forage for miles. A reporter from the city paper arrived. He stood where George had spat a year earlier and photographed the evidence.
She's made us a laughingstock.
The headline on Sunday read, "In a valley of dust, one farm flows green." The feature photograph showed her willows, her raceways, and the ranchers' names printed beneath land that had stopped producing.
Let them print it. The water is the only witness that matters.
Dumb luck. She'll dry up same as us. Just wait.
But the bank notices were piling up in the valley. 3 ranches had crossed into default. The old bet was no longer a wager. It was a clock ticking toward foreclosure, and Karen wasn't running out of time. Her first harvest brought $22 a pound. High-end restaurants in Bozeman placed standing orders.
Every room booked. The lodge is turning people away. It's real.
Opening night, guests and waiters toasted with local whiskey on the deck, watching trout rise in the evening light. The conservation easement tax credits for year 5 reached $140,000. Across the valley, bank letters were piling up. Bill Taggart's operating loan was called in.
I am gonna lose it. 3 generations, and I am the one holding the notice.
You don't let a piece of paper take what your daddy built. You fight.
That week, George sold his prize breeding bull, the herd sire, for less than half its value.
They're bleeding out. I can feel it from here. The next auction won't go their way.
The old bet had reversed. Karen now had cash reserves, and the ranchers were begging the bank for another month. A foreclosure notice was nailed to Jed Paris's gate on a Tuesday morning. It hung there, white paper against dry wood, for everyone to see.
Jed's land is the key. If I can hold it, the whole upper basin becomes one watershed.
By noon, the diner buzzed with the news. Every rancher had an opinion, most of them sharp.
She won't get it. Some developer'll outbid her. A trout farm can't compete with real money.
I stood there when they nailed it. That gate has had my family's brand on it for 100 years.
The numbers don't lie. I can cover the debt and still have working capital for 3 more years.
Her lawyer confirmed the auction terms and advised her to register as a bidder. She filled out the form that evening. At the diner, George slammed his fist. Bill just stared at his plate. Jed didn't come in.
Let them rage. The auction will decide who was right about this valley.
7 days later, the county steps were full. The auctioneer called the first lot Paris Ranch. Before the first bid could land, a county clerk stepped forward with a bankruptcy stay. The auction was halted. The crowd dispersed in confusion. Karen felt the wind shift. She wouldn't win today, But the grand opening of the Orvis-endorsed lodge was in 2 days, and it would be her real stage. The event drew state officials, a senator, and reporters from across the region. They walked through the restored stream corridor, cameras flashing. The senator told the gathered press, this model could save rural Montana. Karen Harper had turned a dead creek into an economic engine.
They're listening. For the first time, they're listening.
From a ridge across the valley, George, Bill, and Jed watched the celebration through binoculars, invisible to the cameras.
Look at 'em. They treat her like a saint, and we're up here in the dirt.
Jed didn't answer. He just watched the people, who now called his land a model, and said nothing.
They're still up there. But this valley isn't theirs anymore.
The opening sealed the reversal. She was no longer the city girl playing creek. She was the valley's newest success story, and the old guard had become spectators. The bankruptcy stay expired 4 weeks after the lodge opening. The bank posted a new foreclosure notice, and the auction was set for 60 days out.
60 days. That's all Jed's got left. And Bill, your north quarter might be next.
I know. The bank told me to start selling off pasture. I've got nothing left to sell but the land itself.
Karen met with her banker and laid out the operation's cash flow. Tax credit receipts, harvest contracts, lodge bookings, all of it.
Jed's debt is manageable. I can cover it and still have enough to run the whole watershed for 3 years.
The banker studied the numbers for a long moment, then stamped her bid authorization without a word.
She's going to own the whole valley. I can feel it in my bones. We're finished, Bill.
Maybe we should have listened, but it's too late now.
The auction is mine. They've spent 5 years betting against me, and now I am the bank.
Every calendar in the county had a red circle around the auction date. The valley held its breath, and for the first time, the ranchers weren't doing the talking. The morning of the auction, the county courthouse steps were packed. Ranchers, bank officers, and a developer from the valley waited in the dry heat. The auctioneer called for bids. A developer in sunglasses raised his paddle at $180,000. Karen lifted her paddle and called out, $210. A murmur cut through the crowd. The developer hesitated, then shook his head. No one else moved. The auctioneer's gavel hovered.
Clear the debt. Restore the stream. This is the first scene.
The gavel struck. Sold to the lady in the hat, Karen Harper. She crossed to the clerk's table, signed the certificate, and turned. Jed Paris was standing alone at the edge of the crowd.
I'll restore it, Jed. The creek will run again on your family's land.
She bought my father's land, and she's promising to bring the water back. I don't know what to feel.
The old bet was buried. Karen now held the deed to the first of what would become 3 ranches, and the valley had a new kind of neighbor. Within 3 months, Bill Taggart found the same white paper nailed to his own gate. Foreclosure. Auction in 60 days.
It's my turn. The bank won't give me another extension. I am done, George.
Not mine, Bill. Not ever. She won't touch Harwood soil.
But his own bank had sent 2 demand letters in 6 weeks. The Harwood Ranch was 3 months behind on its operating note.
40 acres and a dead creek. She can't want it.
Karen deposited the next tax credit check and instructed her lender to ready a bid for the Taggart parcel.
She's gonna own the whole valley. Me, Jed, and then you are next.
I told you, not mine. I'll sell every last steer before I let her get 1 inch of Harwood ground.
The county paper ran the legal notice, Taggart Ranch, 320 acres, to be sold at public auction. In her office, Karen traced the new property lines on a topographical map, already planning the beaver dam analogs that would link the watersheds. Bill Taggart's auction was quiet, no outside bidders registered. Karen was the only buyer in the room. She raised her paddle at the reserve price. No one countered. The gavel fell. The auctioneer handed her the certificate. Sold to Karen Harper, Taggart Ranch, 320 acres. She walked the new land that afternoon, a sold sign staked at the gate, the same way she'd started 5 years before. Bill didn't come to the diner that night. His chair stayed empty. George Harwood sat alone, staring at the coffee ring on the table. Jed Paris now worked for Karen. He wore her ranch hat and drove her supply truck. No one laughed anymore.
I know what it looks like, but she's paying better than cattle ever did, and my creek has water in it for the first time in 4 years.
You are wearing her brand, Jed. You've forgotten whose side you are on.
Karen now held the deeds to 3 ranches. All fed the same watershed. Only George Harwood's 40 acres lay outside the fence. George stood alone on his last parcel, the dry creek bed at his feet. For the first time, there was no one left to argue with. A third ranch, a small 100-acre parcel that had been an absent trust, surfaced at auction. No one expected Karen Harper to bid again. She lifted her paddle quietly, offered the reserve, and closed the sale before the first onlooker could sneer. The news reached George Harwood within the hour. He was sitting alone in his truck when the radio broadcast the latest sale. That evening, a certified letter from his own bank waited in the mailbox. He opened it on the porch. The letter read, "Final notice of default. Pay the full operating balance of $42,000 within 60 days, or the Harwood Ranch will proceed to public auction."
42,000, and I've already sold the bull. There's nothing left to sell. 60 days. That's how long my name has on this piece of ground.
He walked the fence line of his 40 acres, the dead creek a brown scar, and tried to count the ways out.
The only person in this valley with cash is the one I've been calling a fool for 5 years.
He folded the letter, put it in his pocket, and watched the sun set over his land. The 60 days had already started. The 60 days passed in a slow grind of selling equipment piece by piece. George watched his last 3 steers leave on a trailer and still owed $33,000. A white envelope arrived, this one a legal notice. Auction scheduled for the 3rd Saturday of the month. Harwood Ranch, 40 acres. From the ridge that afternoon, he could see Karen's crew working on the former Paris place, driving posts for new beaver dam analogs. Water was already pooling where his cattle used to drink.
That's my water, or it was. She's got my neighbors in her crew and my creek in her plans. If I go to her, I'll have to eat every word I've said for 5 years. But if I don't...
That evening, he got into his old pickup and drove the 2 miles to the Harper Ranch gate without turning on the radio. The gate was closed. A new wooden sign hung on it, Harper Restoration Ranch. He stopped the engine.
She's got my name on a sign now, or close enough. 5 years ago, I bet she'd be gone by spring. I have to open this gate, but I can't make my hands move.
He didn't get out. He just sat there, the engine ticking, staring at the sign that proved every one of his bets wrong. The engine died. George Harwood opened the door, removed his hat, and walked toward the house as if his boots were filled with lead. Karen answered the knock. She saw the hat in his hands and understood immediately why he had come.
I need to ask you something.
She led him inside without a word.
They're auctioning my place. I've got nothing left to sell. I'm asking if you'll lease my 40 acres back to me.
5 years ago, he bet I'd fail. Now he's standing in my office asking for a lease.
I was wrong. Every word. And I hate that I have to say it.
She let the silence stretch, not to punish him, but because she needed to hear it from his own mouth.
He said it. Now the decision is mine, and it will define this entire valley.
George had said everything he came to say. Karen's answer would wait for tomorrow. The next morning, Karen called George back to her office. A single typed document lay on the desk between them.
The lease has 2 conditions, George. You'll permanently rest the riparian corridor. No cattle within 100 feet of the creek. And you'll join the valley-wide conservation cooperative. Dues, workdays, restoration targets, the whole framework.
Cooperative? You want me to pay dues into a group that's been telling me I've been wrong my whole life?
That's the price.
George looked past her, through the window, where the creek now ran clear. Somewhere beyond it, his grandchildren were growing up.
Those kids won't ever swim in a creek like this if I don't say yes.
He turned back to her, and the resistance had drained out of him. He nodded, a single slow motion.
Then we'll get it in writing.
The handshake would wait for the lawyer, but the terms were now written in history. The loudest mocker had just agreed to restore what he'd spent years ridiculing. The lawyer arrived at 9 the next morning. Karen and George sat on opposite sides of the table, the lease document between them. George picked up the pen, his hand steady for the first time in weeks. He signed each page without looking at Karen.
I am signing my land to the woman I tried to drive out, but maybe that's what it takes to keep it alive.
Karen signed after him, and the lawyer stamped the document. The Harwood lease was now legally binding. That afternoon, George unrolled a spool of barbed wire along the creek. He was building the fence that would keep his own cattle off the banks, exactly what he'd mocked 5 years before. Bill Taggart and Jed Paris pulled up in a supply truck. They didn't speak, just leaned on the hood and watched George hammer the first staple.
Don't just stand there. If I am doing this, you are helping.
The three men worked in silence, stringing wire along the riparian zone, while Karen watched from the office window.
He's not doing it for me. He's doing it because his grandchildren will see him differently. That's the only conversion that matters.
By dusk, the first section of fence was complete. The Harwood Ranch was now part of the watershed restoration, and the cooperative had its newest member. Year 7. The cooperative now managed 12 miles of restored water. Willow thickets lined every bend, and native cutthroat trout spawned for the first time in decades. The stream ran clear 12 months of the year, even as the drought dragged on beyond the mountains. George worked beside Karen now, not for her. When a regional reporter arrived, they were side by side, setting stones into a new beaver dam analog.
She was right. I was wrong. Every word I said back then was wrong.
The quote ran on page 1 of the Sunday edition, next to a photograph of the two of them standing in the creek. That same month, her trout operation filled its largest commercial order yet. The harvest crew worked overtime to meet demand. Busloads of ranchers and soil conservationists toured the valley now, and Karen's methods were being replicated in 3 counties.
They built this. All of them. Once they stopped fighting the water and started working with it.
In the evenings, George and Karen sometimes walked the creek together, not talking much, just checking the levels. The bet was 5 years cold. Nobody remembered who won, but every inch of green in that valley remembered who started it. Year 8 brought a drought that cracked every neighboring valley open. Creeks turned to dust. Inside the cooperative's fence, 12 miles of stream kept running. The willows never went dry. Federal scientists walked the banks, measuring what had happened here. George's grandchildren were splashing in water he'd once bet would never come back.
This was all dead once. I bet there'd never be fish in it again. I was wrong.
He looked across the creek at Karen releasing a trout fry, the same motion she'd made 8 years before.
That look means more than any newspaper quote. He's not the man who made that bet.
His grandson held a tiny trout in cupped hands, a first catch never kept.
None of this would be here if she hadn't stood up to us.
The 3 old ranchers stood together on the hill, looking down at the green valley. No one laughed anymore. Year 10. The valley was a paradise of willows, trout, and wildlife. Karen knelt by the creek, releasing a native cutthroat into the current.
10 years ago, this was a dead scar. Now it feeds a watershed.
Behind her, George's grandchildren had brought their friends. The creek echoed with laughter. George sat on a flat rock at the edge, watching the kids, then looked up at Karen.
Turns out you weren't playing creek after all.
She smiled. The kind that said more than words ever could. The creek flowed on, clear and cold, fed by work that had outlasted every drought. On the hill above, the old ranchers still stood, now watching their grandchildren in the water their grandfather had ridiculed. The camera rose, lifting over the valley, over the meandering green ribbons, over the ranch houses with smoke curling from chimneys, a valley restored, a bet forgotten, and a woman who had never once stopped believing.